I now call this meeting of the Kansas State University Student Governing Association Student Senate to order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I want to begin our Student Senate meeting taking place on Thursday, February 23rd, 2023 with a land acknowledgement. We recognize that Kansas State University, as the first land-grant institution, stands on the ancestral lands of the Kaw people. Our state of Kansas is home to 4 federally recognized Native nations: the Iowa, Kickapoo, Prairie Band, Potawatomi, and Sac and Fox. We must remember that the land serving as the foundation for this institution was and still is stolen land acquired by white settlers. We pledge our commitment to creating decolonized spaces at the university while advocating for the support and future success of Indigenous faculty, staff, and students at K-State. And with that, Speaker Pro Tem Pineda Gomez will take it away with our first roll call.
Thanks, Evan, and good evening, everyone. Anderson, Bannister, Bellamy, Blood, Broughton, Brown, Coy, Cuesta, DePaz, Dole, Griffith, Heatherman, Hoffman, Kamen, Kappelman, Kirshen, Kidd, Kermer, Kenzie,
Here.
Long, Middaugh, Morello, Noretti, O'Malley, Howery, Pelton, Phillips, Pilchard, Pondillo, Rogers, Sayat Carly, Sayat Nick, Salmon, Schweier, Spindler, Stout, Strout, Suchanek, Talbert, Thomas, and Wolf.
Here.
All right, thanks, everyone.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone. We have an open period presentation tonight, so everyone, please give a round of applause to Steph Rand and Jessica Hinault here from the Culture of Respect to talk to us tonight.
Hello.
There's
How
a
are
mic.
you?
Jess.
Some of you are familiar. My name is Jessica Hinault. I use she, her pronouns. I used to serve as K-State's sexual and relationship violence prevention specialist within the care office. I now work with NASPA's Culture of Respect program, and I oversee K-State's involvement in it.
Hi, everyone. My name is Steph Moran. My pronouns are they, them, and I am the director of the Center for Advocacy, Response, and Education. So we are the office on campus who helps out people who have been affected by sexual violence, domestic violence, stalking, and also dating violence.
So before we begin, I want to give a brief background about what Culture of Respect is. Last year, K-State made a commitment to taking a stand against sexual violence and joined this 2-year program that is a rigorous process of self-assessment in order to make ongoing sustainable change. And that's what we're going to briefly go through tonight. Steph is one of the co-leads along with Dr. Thomas Lane. You want to explain a little bit about what that means?
Yeah, absolutely. So Thomas and I are co-leads, which means that we are the people in charge of our campus leadership team. Now, our campus leadership team is basically a multidisciplinary team where we have people from all different parts of student life and also just from the university in general. But generally, Thomas and I are the ones who have to deal with meetings, and we're the ones who are kind of really piloting this program at K-State. And then, do you want me to go over? There you go. So as far as the leadership team goes, we have a lot of representation. So we have people from Levine Health Center, the LGBT Resource Center, alumni and diversity programs. We have people from the Morrison Family Center for Student Wellbeing, CAPS, Risk and Compliance. We have people from OGC, KSUPD, the Parents and Family Program, OIE, as well as alumni and faculty. We have student athlete services available, student living and housing and dining, representatives from Interfraternity Council and Pan-Hellenic Council. as well as representatives from Wildcats Against Sexual Violence, the student group, and also, of course, SGA.
Total, that makes about 20-ish folks from across campus in the community who are part of this. So last year, K-State took a 200+ self-assessment to evaluate them over the 6 key pillars that you see on your screen: survivor support, clear policies and procedures, multi-tiered education, public disclosure of statistics, school-wide mobilization, and ongoing self-assessment. I am not going to be going through these scores tonight. I sent Evan a whole packet that dives deep into that for y'all to review. Really what you need to know are the 3 areas that K-State is working to make a lot of tremendous improvement on this semester is public disclosure of statistics, school-wide mobilization, and ongoing self-assessment, because that is where they scored the lowest in. So year 2, you're in it now. K-State has created a bunch of goals and objectives to implement. I'm not going to go through all of them. I'm just going to highlight a few key ones that really stand out. First and foremost, creating a visual depiction of the reporting process. What does this mean? If you all know PPM 3010, you know how jargon it is, you know how legalistic, it's confusing. No one can understand it. People barely understand it if you work here, and I worked here. And so K-State is working to create an infographic that breaks it down. So that way employees can give it to students. It can be hung up around campus, makes it nice and easy. Y'all are exploring best practices for restorative justice as an informal resolution option. Currently, K-State uses mediation as one of the informal resolutions. It's been proven harmful to victims and survivors and re-traumatizing. So I encourage them to get rid of that. And then finally, overarching, really just clarifying PPM 3010 and making it more accessible to the entire community. Moving on to multi-tiered education and public disclosure of statistics. The one I want to highlight on is improving prevention programming for graduate students. Currently, K-State only requires graduate students complete 1 sexual violence programming. It's online. You can complete it in less than 60 minutes. Graduate students experience the highest rates of sexual violence in the nation. And so it's important that we work with graduate students in order to tailor the education to fit their needs, so that way they know what services are available to them on campus. Additionally, K-State is working to strengthen relationships with K-State alumni, parents and families. What does this look like? It's going to be being more active whenever newsletters goes out to alumni, during freshman orientation, all of the above. Nice, thank you. Public disclosure continued, ongoing self-assessment and school-wide mobilization. First and foremost, establishing a peer educator program. There are a lot of students who are doing prevention programming around campus. However, it's really decentralized. There's a lot of different information that is being given out to folks. And so centralizing that. They are working to create self-evaluations for survivors and those who have been accused of committing sexual violence, who go through the Title IX process to get their feedback, to kind of understand what's going on. And additionally, developing and implementing a sexual violence prevention climate survey, which leads to my last point that I wanted to really hone in on. If you remember, in 2021, K-State conducted a sexual violence climate survey. I was one of the lead researchers on that. The results are finally 2 years later coming out tomorrow in K-State Today. Please take a look at it. It is very, very important. It talks about victimization rates at K-State. It talks about perpetration rates at K-State. It's really important that y'all have a deep understanding of what's going on campus, so that way you can work to continue raising your voices, especially as representatives of SGA. I know that was a lot of information. I don't have much time left. However, I wanted to leave room for any questions or comments that y'all may have. Evan has my contact information, so I'm happy to connect with y'all privately as well to continue this discussion, because there's a lot that we didn't cover.
So
Yeah.
any questions?
Are there any questions? Senator Solomon.
It's K-State's responsibility to continue it. So I oversee K-State's involvement up until December of 2023. After that, it's up to them to continue the progress, which they should be.
We will. First off, one of the things about Culture of Respect that really makes it unique is that even after like a cohort graduates, you still have the opportunity and the availability of Jessica being able to provide feedback to you. So yeah, we will absolutely be continuing it, I promise.
Are there any further questions? Caucus Leader Kidd.
Marcus, I didn't even see you over there. Hello.
a different spot, just one row. For the slide that has the entities representation for this, what's like out of all those entities, which ones have students?
Yeah, so that is a great point. We are always looking for students to join the Culture of Respect leadership team. So if you are interested, you are more than welcome to email me or email Thomas. We meet monthly. And basically what we're doing right now, we are going through our individualized implementation plan. So we're going through each of these goals and trying to achieve them by the time that we're out of Culture of Respect. But in terms of who represents what, let's see, we have student alumni, we have IFC, PHC, SJA, Wildcats Against Sexual Violence.
You have a few graduate students that are
Yeah.
involved. If you're interested in joining, I think the area that y'all would really appreciate is school-wide mobilization, because that
Yes.
focuses entirely on connecting with student groups on campus. When K-State took this self-evaluation, the students who helped complete it said that they were feeling a lot of limited support from K-State when it came to partnering with them about anti-violence initiatives.
Chair Phillips.
Oh, good question. I should have clarified that. So the orange bar is the total points possible. The gray bar is how K-State scored. So each question that they answer, there are points that they could get. So do you have a Title IX coordinator? If you do, congratulations, you get 5 points. If you don't, so sorry, you get 0 points.
You should have a Title
Um,
IX coordinator, by
yes.
the way.
Every year, the K-State core evaluation updates based on newest best practices, federal and state guidelines. We have an advisory board that we work with. We spend a tremendous amount of time updating this every year. At the end of K-State's involvement, they're going to retake this exact same core evaluation. So that way they can see the progress that they have made and where they can continue improving. Over 155 institutions across the nation have either graduated from the collective or are currently part of it.
Chair Long.
Yeah.
So in terms of that, we are looking for IFC and PHC to be involved in terms of specifically programming for sorority life and fraternity life. I think we can all agree that they are a bit siloed. So it's very difficult for us to sometimes get in and talk about sexual violence when it comes to those different organizations. So we're trying to basically get them involved in the process, like have their hand in the pot, be able to get feedback from Greek students and then allow them to, tell us what they need.
Before I transitioned out of K-State, I was one of the co-leads for this with Thomas, and we had invited a few folks from Greek life. They attended a few meetings, but I know it died off there for a little bit, which is common for student involvement just because y'all are students first and foremost.
You're busy. We get it.
But yeah, if you're looking to get involved, please feel free to do so. Is there anything else?
Senator Blood.
Yeah. Absolutely. So a lot of survivors report going through the formal Title IX process as very re-traumatizing to them. A lot of them say that it is not beneficial. It's not giving them the closure that they want and they need. And so institutions can implement informal options. So instead of going through the formal Title IX process, they can go through restorative justice. Restorative justice is done many different ways. It originally comes out of indigenous communities. It is a newer area of informal resolution on campuses. What it looks like, specifically at the University of San Diego, who established the first restorative justice program that is considered best practice for higher education. The person who has caused harm and the person that has experienced the harm agree to come together to have a conversation. The person that has experienced harm is the one that has to initiate it. So if they are the ones that want to speak with the accused, they come together. The person that caused harm has to take accountability. Usually this can come in the form of a letter, whether that the survivor read privately, they openly have a conversation about it. It typically involves an advisor. The survivor could also have a survivor advocate with them. It's just a different way for survivors to get closure without having to go through the formal Title IX process if that's not something that they want to do.
And if I could add, one of the things that we hear most often at the care office is, I don't necessarily want to report, but I just want them to acknowledge what they did. So in terms of starting restorative justice practices at K-State, I think this is a really good window of opportunity for us to give students, like student survivors, closure.
Are there any further questions? Okay, seeing none, thank you both so much.
Thank you. Have a good night, y'all.
Thank you. Yeah. Okay, awesome. Thank you, everybody. Unless there are any further first open period speakers this evening, we will go ahead and move into approval of the minutes. The minutes were distributed on Tuesday along with the agenda and legislation tracking information. Are there any questions or corrections for the minutes? Okay, seeing none, is there a motion to approve the minutes? Senator Griffith. It's been moved and seconded to approve the minutes. Are there any objections? Seeing none, the minutes will stand approved. For that, we'll go ahead and move into our announcements for the evening. So first up, we have, again, the Senate Executive Committee application is in there, hyperlinked in the agenda. So if you're interested in applying to be a committee chair or one of the independent positions we have here in SGA, you can click that link. And that form is set to close Friday, March 31st at 11:59 p.m. And then up next, we have nominations for the SGA awards that are now open. So you can nominate your fellow SGA members for either Senator of the Year, the Susan M. Scott Outstanding Female Leader Award, or the Bernard Franklin Outstanding Advocate Award. Senator of the Year is pretty self-explanatory. It's just a member of Student Senate that you feel like went above and beyond. So feel free to nominate any of your fellow senators for that. The Susan M. Scott Outstanding Female Leader Award is reserved for a female member of any of the KSU SGA branches that also went above and beyond and exemplified leadership in their role this year. And then the Bernard Franklin Outstanding Advocate Award is for any member of KSU SGA, any of the three branches that displayed outstanding advocacy, whether it's in their leadership, anything, any aspect of their time here in SGA. So please fill out those nomination forms that'll close next Friday, also at 11:59 p.m. And then also the K-State Libraries published a survey. You should have gotten it in your email, but it came from the Office of Institutional Research. So if you didn't click that email and open it, you can click that hyperlink there and take a survey about the libraries, what level of service you like about the libraries, what you don't like about the libraries, because they are developing their strategic plan right now as well, and they're looking for student feedback. And then next, we have new senator training coming up next Thursday, March 2nd. And then 3 weeks from that, March 23rd at 6 p.m. I know it says 6 p.m. on there. In my email that you all re-elected student senators should have gotten, you'll see that the March 2nd is at 5:30. 5:30 is going to be the correct time. If you got re-elected or you think you got re-elected or elected in the first place and you didn't get an email from me, please email me, reach out to me, and I'll get connected with you about that. And then we have the proxy form there. So if you need to be absent from Student Senate for any reason, you can fill out the proxy form. And I'll evaluate those based on the standing rules. And then the Student Senate Zoom request form. So if you're going to be physically absent, but still able to attend Senate at 7 p.m., you can fill out the Zoom request form. And then if you want to give props to someone in Student Senate, please fill out the Student Senate shout out form. And the SGA members of the week this week are the legislative advocates. They had a very successful advocacy trip to Topeka on Kansas Higher Ed Day. That was last Wednesday. So thank you for working to ensure higher education and K-State students get the support they need. And then no changes on the upcoming events calendar. And the quote of the week this week is, "It isn't where you come from, it's where you're going that counts." And that is Ella Fitzgerald. And up next, we have commendations. So is there a motion to consider Resolution 63? Chair Long? "10 a.m. for the Student Allocations Committee," if you didn't catch Jacob. Okay, it's been moved and seconded to consider Resolution 63. If the author will please come forward.
I use my computer.
Yes.
Hi, I'm here to read Resolution 22-2363, Commendation to Sexuality and Gender Alliance. Authors Joseph Pandillo and Dakota Broughton. Sponsors DEI Committee. Whereas on February 17th, 2023, Sexuality and Gender Alliance hosted their 19th annual drag show that had over 900 people in attendance. Whereas through this performance, the audience was immersed in creative acts that embodied self-expression. Whereas their performers included Monica Moore, Victoria Fox, Kim Chi, Tai Wu, Valerie Love, and Alexander Cameron. This event helped raise over $6,000 that will go to the Dusty Garner Mental Health Fund. And whereas this event helped provide a space that promotes advocacy and recognition to the LGBTQIA+ community on campus who otherwise do not hold events of this scale that represent their different identities. Be it resolved that Section 1, the Kansas State University Student Governing Association applauds the Sexuality and Gender Alliance on their commitment to students and their enthusiasm for making our university more welcoming via showcase of diversity and representation. Section 2, upon passage by the Student Senate and signature of the student body president, a copy of this resolution shall be sent to Sexuality and Gender Alliance President Julia Coverdale, Union Programming Council President Codis Atkinson, Interim Associate Vice President of Diversity and Multicultural Student Affairs, Mirta Chavez, Coordinator of the LGBT Resource Center, Dr. Brandon Haddock, Director of Intercultural Learning and Academic Success, Deborah Bolton, Director of Diversity and Multicultural Student Life, Kevin Santos Flores, Assistant Director of Multicultural Student Engagement, Dr. Graciela Berumen, Program Coordinator for Diversity and Multicultural Student Affairs, Brandon Clark, for Program Administrator for Diversity and Multicultural Student Affairs, Adam Carr, Vice President for Student Life and Dean of Students, Dr. Thomas Lane, and University President, Dr. Richard H. Linton.
Thanks, Dakota. Are there any questions or corrections for the author? Seeing none, is there a motion to, Senator Coy. Thank you. Are there any further questions or corrections? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve Resolution 63? Senator Solomon. It's been moved and seconded to approve Resolution 63 unanimously. Are there any objections? Seeing none, Resolution 63 will stand approved. And with that, we will go ahead and move into approval of appointments for the evening. Is there a motion to consider Resolution 64? Senator Griffith. It's been moved and seconded to consider Resolution 64. If the author will please come forward.
Resolution 22-2364, approval of interim student senator. Authors Bentley J. Talbert, sponsors Senate Operations Committee. Whereas there is currently one vacancy for the position of student senator for the College of Arts and Sciences. Whereas Article 4, Section 5B of the Kansas State University Student Governing Association, KSU-SJ bylaws allow the Senate Operations Committee to appoint interim student senators from the KSU-SJ mentee class after recommendation from the KSU-SJ Emerging Leaders Coordinator. Whereas interim student senators have the privileges and responsibilities of a student senator and KSU-SJ mentee, whereas the proximity to the end of the KSU-SJ term makes the position of student senator less desirable and therefore more difficult to fill from the student body. And whereas the KSU SGA Emerging Leaders Coordinator has recommended Chase Glasscock for the position of interim student senator for the College of Arts and Sciences. Be it resolved that Section 1, the following individuals be approved as interim student senators from the College of Arts and Sciences. Chase Glasscock.
Thanks, Bentley. Are there any questions or corrections for the author? Okay, seeing none, is there a motion to approve Resolution 64? Coordinator Len. It's been moved and seconded to approve Resolution 64 unanimously. Are there any objections? Seeing none, Resolution 64 will stand approved. And Chase, you can come on down to get sworn in. Peyton, do you want to get a picture? Okay, you can raise your right hand and say "I will" at the end after Peyton gets up here with her camera. I do solemnly swear that I will faithfully execute the office of student senator and will, to the best of my ability, preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the Kansas State University Student Governing Association. Okay, thanks, Chase. If you want to introduce yourself, I know you've already done this, but hit us with your name and pronouns, your major, your hometown, and your favorite smell.
Yeah, so Chase Glasscock, majored in environmental science, hometown, Manhattan, Kansas. Favorite smell, I forgot what I said last time. Let's say like after a rain, fresh cut grass. Sometimes it's really good, sometimes less good, but I like it most of the time, so. Yeah.
Okay, and with that, we will go ahead and move into committee reports for the evening. Are there any committee chairs that would like to give a report tonight? Chair Pondillo.
Hey guys, so this is my fourth and final legislative presentation of DPF. You can go to the next slide. So this is what we funded our first semester. You can see the totals. I will touch on like the lack of funding in the first semester. If you want to go to the second, next slide. So this one has like twice as much. These are just all the totals that we funded. Any questions on those? Any groups at all? Anybody?
Yeah, Senator Morello.
Yeah, so some of them are repeats because we are allowed to fund essentially 3 applications for each student organization. So they just applied for different events on different days.
Are there any further questions?
Cool, see none, continuing on. So the next one, next slide. So our starting allocation was about 152,000. So far we have allocated 146,000. We have no more applications to be allocated, which leaves us $6,406 left to allocate. We will not be allocating that. That will go into reserves. In years past, it has been a lot less. So we are spending money super fun and fresh. And our reserve balance as of right now is 122K. So recent trends from last time I spoke, some people had questions. Recent trends are like in the fall, there's less applicants due to like change of leadership. Also certain just applications are like harder to come by, and it makes it very hard on like new leadership. And then there has been 10 applications out of the 21 applications that have been under 3K. You may say, why have I put that there? Well, last year at the beginning of my term, I did eliminate the minimum. And so this is great. This is showing us that people are utilizing that change. And so, yeah, I have nothing else to say unless you guys have questions.
Awesome. Thanks, Joseph. Are there any questions?
Bring them.
Senator Salmon.
Yeah, if you want to go back. So for example, let me pull one. So, so the 8,500 is actually Muslim Student Association. So sorry, y'all, it was a little wonky. But let me find the 400 one, which is graduate students in psychology. That was essentially for bringing speakers via Zoom to come present about how to like administer Narcan, and also like the possibilities of harm that can be caused by like needles to AIDS, and it affects different communities, right? Do you want me to give you another one? Cool.
Are there any further questions? Okay, seeing none, thanks, Joseph. You can take your seat. Are there any further committee chairs that would like to give a report tonight? Seeing none, are there any directors that would like to give a report tonight? Okay, seeing none, we'll go ahead and move into our approval of the allocations for the evening. So we have several allocations up for approval tonight. First, we have Bill 77. This is the fiscal year 23 student allocation to the American Nuclear Society KSU student section. They requested 1,000 and we recommended 1,000 for travel to the ANS Student Conference. Bill 78, the fiscal year 2023 student allocation to the Architectural Engineering Institute competition team. They requested 900 and were recommended 900 to travel for the AEI International Student Design Competition. Bill 79, the fiscal year 2023 student allocation to Illumination Engineering Society. They requested 600 and were recommended 600 for travel to the Illuminating Engineering Society Annual Conference. Bill 80, the fiscal year 2023 student allocation to the Japanese Yosakoi Dance Club. They requested 300 and were recommended 300 for travel to the California Cherry Blossom Festival. Bill 81, the fiscal year 2023 student allocation to minorities in agriculture, natural resources, and related sciences. They requested 1,000 and were recommended 1,000 for travel to the National Manners Conference. Bill 82, the fiscal year 2023 student allocation to the National Society of Black Engineers. They requested 800 and were recommended 200 for the NSBE Annual National Conference, Bill 83, the fiscal year 2023 student allocation to On the Spot Improv. They requested 6,000 and were recommended 5,500 for Dell Fest. The fiscal year, Bill 84, the fiscal year 2023 student allocation to Pi Sigma Epsilon. They requested 1,000 and were recommended 500 for travel to the Pi Sigma Epsilon 2023 National Convention. Bill 85, the fiscal year 2023 student allocation to the Pre-Veterinary Medicine Club. They requested 400 and were recommended 400 to the American Pre-Veterinary Medical Association Symposium. And Bill 86, the fiscal year 2023 student allocation to Ratio Christi. They were requested 800 and were recommended 750 for the Ratio Christi, The Problem of Evil. With that, is there a motion to approve the allocations? Senator Questa. It's been moved and seconded to approve the allocations. Are there any objections? Seeing none, the allocations will stand approved. And with that, we'll go ahead and move into final action for the evening. First up, we have Bill 87. Bill 87 was referred favorably from the Student Services Fee Committee, 8 to 0. Have any changes been made?
Yes, several. I will start in the section 1 with the changes. So there were several changes to different amounts for our entities on here. First, campus orgs, actually no, Safe Ride and academic competition teams received they did receive 5% cuts in the last version that you saw of this bill. They now receive continuances, and that same amount of money that would have been cut from both of those organizations went to being cut from campus organizations. So just a little change there. Additionally, UFM, as of the last time that this bill was introduced, was not a part of this legislation. It has since been added back on for 1 year of funding in fiscal year 2024 of $10,000. And so the changes that were made in addition to that just appear in some of that contractual language down below. You can see that in section 8 and section 9. For section 8 for sports clubs, we also changed which reserves that $16,000 was coming out of. And then there are associated whereas clause changes above as well. Sorry, there's a lot of changes to go line by line.
Blake, I just noticed the section numbers are all wrong. So before we certify it, I'll fix the section numbers starting at number 9 in the contract.
Got it. Thank you for catching that.
Yep, you have first rights to debate.
All right, everyone. So this legislation was introduced a couple of weeks ago, and I believe that this is the best piece of legislation, or this piece of legislation as is tonight is what should be passed. The Student Services Committee has put in a ton of work on this piece of legislation. For context, we began our review of the student activity fee back on October 24th of last year. So we've been looking at this for a long time. If you add up all the combined hours that we've spent, this is just very very rough math. I know we've spent over 12 hours looking at specifically all of these entities and deciding those funding amounts, where they should go, all of the contractual language that is included. So I would really encourage you all to pass this legislation as is. None of these decreases are easy. I know that we've spent a lot of time this year arguing for decreases to our entities, and that hurts. There are a lot of well-deserving entities on our campus, but unfortunately, just due to our overall budget situation, as well as declining enrollment, decreased collections, we have to ultimately realign our budget with the amount of money that we collect. And this is a necessary step to do that. For context, the committee came in with a goal of decreasing the student activity fee by about $100,000 in order to stay on track and realign our budget with those collections. And we were able to do that. If you compare this total student activity fee budget amount with the exact number from the previous contract, you'll see that they're actually similar. The only reason that those are different is because we added Safe Ride to the fee, which was something that the committee voted to do back in October or September. And additionally, we added sports clubs to the fee. So that's not new money. That's just something that was already on the student services fee. We just decided that it fit better with this group of entities. So that was what we did. Ultimately, the committee spent a ton of time on this. You can see the exact rationale for each cut, why the decision was made in those whereas clauses. But by a vote of let me get that exact vote, 7-2-0. This was recommended to Student Senate. When it came back to committee, we had a 10-0 vote for that specific UFM change as well. And then this ultimately was referred back to Student Senate favorably by an 8-2-0 to vote. So this has the strong, overwhelming support of the Student Services Fee Committee. This has my overwhelming support. And so I would strongly, strongly encourage you to vote yes on this legislation today.
Thanks, Blake. Seeing as that was debate in the positive, we're now seeking speeches in the negative. Chair Pondillo, go ahead. So DPF is getting $137,000 after the reserves, and that's reflected in the subtraction of the diversity programming fund allocation on line 146. But the overall amount of money that will be available to allocate every year is $137,000. So that's why that's reflected in the table at the top. That's what we do for all of the other allocations that receive funding out of a reserve account. So like sports clubs gets money from the reserve for contingencies and the sports club account, and multicultural student organizations gets $14,000, but that comes entirely out of reserves. So we leave the table at the top to reflect the exact amount of money that they will have to allocate every year. Anyway, we're still seeking speeches in the negative. Are there any further speeches in the positive? Are there any further speeches? Senator Blood? Is it your amendment? Okay, please pull that up, Bryce. That's the other one. Other one. Nope. Go back. Bryce, it's the second one. The second one, the second Word document. There you go. Thank you. Now scroll down to where the amended part is. Okay, go back up to the first part, the red text. Go back up. Keep going. There you go.
There you go. So this amendment strikes lines 77 and 78, changes line 80, saying that UFM should begin to seek alternative funding for this position, and says that they should not be reviewed after the end of fiscal year 2023. Scroll down, please. It should be like, yeah. Changes on line 140, the dollar amount to 0, and then just removes UFM. The last version I gave to Evan, just so that I submitted everything in writing, also has the on line 150 crossed out.
Thanks, Brian. Is there a second to this amendment? Is that a second? Okay, Brian. You have first rights to debate?
Perfect. Yeah, I just, after hearing from everyone, really have decided personally and that the body should consider the original piece of legislation that was introduced here and shouldn't fund UFM. While it does serve students here at K-State, it's not an on-campus entity. And funding them, in my mind, with student tuition dollars that are required for students to pay to be here instead of as an additional fee for students who take UFM courses, I don't think that we should, as a body that represents all students at K-State, fund it. So that is the reason for the amendment and why I am recommending that UFM seeks alternative funding.
Thanks, Brian. Seeing as that was debate in the positive on the amendment, we're now seeking speeches in the negative. Chair Phillips.
All right. Good evening again, everyone. So first, I wanted to speak just a little bit to the Student Services Fee Committee process behind this. This was something that we considered for a long time, the decision on UFM. And like I mentioned, the first time that this legislation came to Student Senate, it did not include UFM. After discussion, UFM came to Student Senate the next week and presented some information to us. That information is included in this packet, and I will make that available to you all, both in this packet, which I'll put in the back, as well as in an electronic format that I will get sent to you here as soon as I'm done. But part of what that discussion entailed was just the importance of UFM. And so you can find that in this document. And I know there's several people today here that'll speak, so I'll save a lot of that for you all to speak on. But included also in this document was a petition from a lot of our students here on campus. And so just a petition asking Student Senate not to take the action that is being proposed via this amendment today. And as well, if that'll stay up there, a stack of letters from various faculty members across campus and very interested stakeholders in this decision-making process, also urging Student Senate not to take this action. So this is available for everyone. I would strongly encourage you all to look at it. I've read through every single one of these letters and it really tells a good story. Additionally, for the committee, after meeting with UFM last week, we decided in what we all consider a mutual understanding that UFM would remain on the student services fee for one more year for fiscal year 2024. And at that point in time, UFM would seek additional sources of funding for that. We thought that this was a really good compromise, and I spoke with the director of UFM about this as well, and she is on board with that proposal as well. So ultimately, that's why I would encourage you all not to vote for this amendment. Again, I will put this back in the vestibule for anyone who would like to look at that, and I can also get that sent out via email. So I would strongly encourage you all to vote no. Thank you.
Thanks, Blake. Seeing as that was debate in the negative on the amendment, we're now seeking speeches in the positive. Senator Griffith. So yeah, UFM is University for Humankind. Rachel, do you want to, or Chase, either one of you, do you want to give a better explanation than I'll be able to? Go ahead. Just as a reminder, please remember to be recognized before asking a question. Do you have a question, Caucus Leader Bellamy? Unless there are any further points of information or questions of privilege, we are seeking debate in the positive on the amendment. Are there any further speeches in the negative? Coordinator Lynn?
Hey everyone, I know I just spoke a bunch, so I don't want to take up too much of your time, but some of you might be wondering who the heck is this girl? My name is Rachel Grolmus. I just graduated from K-State this December with a communication studies major, Spanish minor, and a nonprofit leadership certificate. And I worked at UFM as the student office assistant for just over 2 years. So I'm here to essentially speak to you on why UFM should get this funding for fiscal year 2024, as it will only get it for the next fiscal year, $10,000. So like I mentioned, UFM serves students in a variety of different ways and different programs. And the signature programs have to do with our catalog, which showcases the non-credit and credit classes. So credit is what K-State students can take. And I failed to mention earlier that Project Excel is a program for adults with developmental disabilities, and K-State students volunteer for that program as well. There is also the UFM tutoring program that has volunteers that are K-State students. The Lou Douglas Lecture Series is always offered to members of the entire community, including K-State students. So all of UFM's programs are open to K-State students. Currently in 2022, there were 1,046 students, and they're mostly seniors that take UFM classes. And for the majority of the time, a lot of these students may have dropped out of a class because they weren't getting the grade that they needed in order to keep their GPA. But in order to remain a full-time student and to keep their scholarship dollars, they went ahead and signed up for an 8-week UFM course so that they could continue to keep their full-time status so they don't lose their scholarship money. So that is just one tidbit of what UFM does for the community. But beyond that, UFM affects many lives, and that is showed by what Blake talked about earlier. There are 77 names of students and K-State alumni that signed the petition that Blake mentioned. And yes, back there over by Ethan, green binder or green folder. 77 students who oppose the defunding of UFM. So we please don't want this amendment. Additionally, there are 11 letters that Blake also mentioned. These are from faculty, staff, and one alumni, one student. Just notably, some faculty are doctors who have achieved their doctorate. There's also the Esther Swilly is the marketing department head. We also have Colleen Lind. She is a professor in the AQ Miller School of Media and Communication. So I just wanted to point out those three to show who from across campus is writing letters or who wrote letters to in support of UFM in funding, disapproving of this bill. And please, if you're at all curious or if you are at all considering to vote in favor of this amendment, I urge you to please go check out that folder just to see what people are saying. I worked for UFM for 2 years and it's a very near and dear place in my heart. So I'd be happy to talk to you about it. The numbers show that UFM serves students. Also, we're not asking for funding forever. It's just the next fiscal year. So
Time.
please consider voting no.
Thanks, Rachel. Seeing as that was debate in the negative, we are now seeking speeches in the positive. Are there any further speeches in the negative? Senator Kermer.
So I was quite unsure about this at first, but I was reading through documents that Blake sent out. And in it was a letter from Cater Kingery Page, which is the Associate Dean of College of Architecture. And I guess UFM has classes about health and wellness. And with the College of Architecture, I believe that to be a very strong thing that needs to be active with UFM. So I would ask you to please vote no on this.
Thanks, Brandon. Seeing as that was debate in the negative, we're now seeking speeches in the positive. And are there any further speeches in the negative on the amendment? Senator Bannister?
I'm going to call the previous question.
I'm sorry, the previous question is not in order at this time. Are there any further speeches in the negative? Seeing none, we'll move into a hand vote on the motion to amend. All those in favor of the amendment, please raise your placards now. Senator Blood. Oh, all those in favor of the amendment, please raise your placards now. All those opposed, same sign. Okay, that amendment will fail. Thank you, everybody. With that, we'll go ahead and move back into debate on Bill 87, and we were seeking speeches in the negative. Are there any further speeches in the positive? Senator Solomon? Senator Solomon has an amendment. Bryce, can you pull that up? And RJ, can you come forward and explain? The first Word document. They get to explain and then.
All right, so I just explained it first, right? So this amendment is to cut the Graduate Student Council 100% and off the student services fee. There are numbers and stuff in here that change it and things, but that is the basic premise of this amendment.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. RJ, you have first rights to debate.
Do I have 4 minutes or 5 minutes? Four. Sounds good, thank you. I would like to first start by offering 3 framing statements to frame this debate and this conversation we're having. First of all, my debate is not over the merit or value of the Graduate Student Council. The GSC, Graduate College, and graduate students are all important to K-State, and that should not be denied. Secondly, my argument focuses on if GSC should stay on the student services fee, and we should focus solely on that. And third, I encourage everyone to frame their debate around whether GSC fits the classification of a student services fee entity, and subsequently, if it should stay on the fee. So my first argument is GSC should not be classified as a student services fee entity. An SF entity must fit 2 criteria. First, it is funded by all students who pay into the student services fee. And second, it is accessible by all students who pay into that fee. For the Graduate Student Council, the first is true. All undergraduate students, all graduate students, all students who are full-time here at K-State pay into this fee. The second is false. Only graduate students can utilize these funds in the Graduate Student Council to present their research at conferences or travel to other things that are relevant to them. Undergraduate students should not pay in an entity they cannot access, and every other entity on the fee currently fits the bill of the previous 2 statements I gave you, and so the Graduate Student Council is the one that is the outlier currently. My second argument is historical precedence. The School of Architecture, Planning and Design was originally allocated $19,000 in FY 2021 to be given for speakers that are presented in front of APD students that is meant to improve their professional development and things like that. The Student Services Fee Committee cut APD 100% and off the commit or off the fee because of two things. One, those services were not accessible by all students, and two, it did not provide benefit to non-APD students. The Graduate Student Council is the same, and I think an exaggerated example, which is my third point. APD funded speakers specifically focused on students in the design profession, but they were still technically accessible to all students. These speakers gave presentations in the architectural school, but other students could theoretically come and listen to them if they wanted to. But in reality, APD students were only ones who attended these things, which is why the Student Services Fee decided that not only it was only for those students, but also only benefited those students. GSC funding, on the other hand, not only focuses solely on graduate students, but is entirely inaccessible by undergraduate students, which is, I think, a more exaggerated example of why we need to cut this off the Student Services Fee. We need to follow the same precedents we've used in the past, and in my opinion, the Graduate Student Council should not have been on the fee in the first place due to the qualifications that they don't fit those two criteria. I would also like to respond to a couple objections I perceive coming up in negative speeches. First is that GSC provides benefit to undergraduate students. I would offer two responses to this. First, a student services fee entity must be accessible to all students, and GSC is not. It is true for every single other entity on the fee, and that can't be denied. We have to follow that order because that is what the student services fee is for. Secondly, presentation of research and conference attendance benefits graduate students, which is obvious, but does not provide a substantial direct or indirect benefit to undergraduate students. Arguments will likely be made that the research that is done or presentations that are given at this conference will eventually trickle down to undergraduate students via teaching or other things like that. But that benefit alone is not enough, nor is the fact that undergraduate students simply cannot access it. Both those arguments, I think, answer that objection. Second objection, graduate students are underrepresented in utilization of other student services fee entities. It is true that undergraduate students do utilize other entities more than graduate students. And I think that is for two reasons. One, there are more undergraduate students than graduate students, but two, graduate students are often busy with other things such as research and going to conferences and adult things. But in my opinion, my response to this is all students can access these other entities. Graduate students are not barred from using things such as the sports clubs or academic competition teams or diversity programming funds or UFM for that example. But GSC disallows undergraduate students from utilizing those services, which means I think it should be off the committee. I understand this is controversial. I understand that it's kind of weird, but in my opinion, we should be debating on the merits of whether GSC is a student services fee entity and therefore should continue to have funding. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Solomon. Seeing as that was debate in the positive on the amendment, now seeking speeches in the negative. Chair Phillips.
Question of privilege. And more for RJ. Is the intention of this amendment to strike Graduate Student Council off the fee to not be reviewed again?
Yes.
For a friendly amendment, just for clarity, and instead of just a highlighted yellow line, can we change that to a strike through?
Bryce, can you highlight the Graduate Student Council part? But no, just the line that's highlighted right now. And then up under where you change the font, just strike through that text. Thank you. Okay. Anyway, we are now seeking speeches in the negative. Senator Morello. Go ahead.
Is this the only way the grad student council is funded? Or is this just the?
Tucker, go ahead.
I can answer that. I was going to speak in the negative too. Is that okay?
Answer the question and then I can recognize your first speech.
So is this the only way we are funded? For those of you who do not know, I'm Tucker Graff. I'm the current president of the Graduate Student Council this year. So this is not the only way that we get funding for travel awards, but it is one of the main. We get money from the Office of the President, Graduate School itself, SGA, and then the Kansas Space Grant Consortium, which is a NASA. So SGA funding makes up about, I'd say probably 15% off the top of my head of what our funding is. So it is a substantial cut, and we don't fund everybody who applies for travel awards. We fund on average on an annual basis, we're 75 to about 80.
Tucker, you can speak in the negative now.
Cool, if I come up.
Okay, I will try to keep this brief so that way we do not waste everybody's time. Obviously, I'm against this. There are a few things that I want to highlight. First of all, the argument that everything funded on here is available to all students across campus, I think is just patently not true. For example, the soils judging team's an academic competition team. It is a level 400 class. You are not required to take below a level 600 class in your major if you're a graduate student. So they just cannot do that. It's a bit of a nitpicky thing because technically you could say that if they wanted to, they could TA it or anything like that. But it is the fact that, you know, that is something they cannot do. Students in agriculture cannot do the concrete canoe team. Not everything is open to everybody. The second argument I would make is that graduate students are about 5,000 students as of 2021. We're about 25% of the campus. We pay student services fees just like everybody else. We pay more per credit hour than undergraduates do. And this is the main benefit that we get out of it. And the argument that undergraduates don't benefit from this, I think, is also a bit of a confusing one. I can't speak to how every single department does this, but in my department in grain science, the Feed Science Club, which is an entirely undergraduate club, they travel with the graduate students to IPPE every year. They use it to network, to get jobs and things like that. They would not go to that conference if graduate students from our department were not going. The only reason why they go is because the advisor whose graduate students are going takes extra money to pay to bring the undergrad students with them. And some of that's funded by the department as well. So there is benefit from this just in that tangible sense. Another thing that I want to talk about is how students are funded to go to travel or to go to conferences in general. So some conferences are funded by grants. That is true, I would say probably for 30, 40% of graduate students. Those people are not supposed to apply for travel awards. Our travel awards are intended for students who have limited funding, and they are encouraged to use department funds ahead of time. Now, that's something that we can't verify largely because departments do not always want to cooperate with us and give us how much money that they're giving their students. I don't know why they keep that secret, they just do. The College of Agriculture doesn't like to communicate how much they give. The College of Engineering doesn't like to communicate. So we have to kind of do the honor system, but we do put spots in there for them to do it. So this is intended for students with the greatest need. The next thing is you can get funding from your advisor, but not every advisor likes to pay for it. Some advisors about it are better than others. And so when all of that disappears, you have to pay for funding yourself. Just to give you guys an idea of how graduate student funding works, I'm on an assistantship. So I get paid $26,000 a year to do research here, and that's funded by a grant that sponsors my research. So after tax, that's $22,000. I have to pay tuition out of that, which is $10,000 to $12,000 on top of that. So I'm down to about $10,000 to $12,000 left to live off of. Conference memberships are about $350 to $400 just to attend the conference, present research. And it's not a coincidence that our funding, our average funding amount is $350 to $400. That is the least we can do for graduate students, is to pay for them to go to these things. And they can still figure out ways to try to get funding outside of that for flights or hotels or food. But academia is expensive. And this spreads the reputation of Kansas State. This spreads the recruitment. I know anytime I go to a conference, I get, I don't know, probably two book bags worth of material from the dean of the dean of grain science to take and hand out material to undergraduates to try to get them to come to the college. It's the same thing with people from other colleges. There is intrinsic benefit to it. I'm not going to sit here. So yeah, vote no.
Senator Cameron,
Move to extend the speaker's time by 2 minutes.
second. By how many minutes? It's been moved and seconded to extend the speaker's time by 2 minutes. Are there any objections? You have 2 more minutes.
I'm not going to sit here and pretend and say that undergraduates benefit directly from funding this. I do believe that somebody who is better at presenting their research is going to be a more effective communicator, and they're going to be a better teacher. And it, you know, graduate students teach 100, 200 level courses all across this campus. They are kind of the first line of teachers who are introducing young undergraduates to a major. So I do think there is some intrinsic benefit to that, but I will agree that is not a direct benefit that undergraduates get. It is kind of just an additional benefit. So with that being said, I hope you guys vote no on this. This will hurt graduate students. It's going to hurt us pretty severely, honestly. And I would, if you're going to vote yes on this, I would just encourage you to think about the message that sends about how important 25% of the student population is to you. So if you guys have any questions, I would be happy to take them.
We do not allow questions.
Okay,
unfortunately. We're good. Thank you, Tucker. Seeing as that was debate in the negative, we're now seeking speeches in the positive on the amendment. Chair Long.
Just some friendly facts from the SAC chair related to this. So looking at percentages, I'm going to use the term from the previous speaker, the number, a 15% cut to the graduate student council's overall ability to travel. Campus orgs is the undergraduate travel budget. It's now taking a 27% cut. DPF is taking 34%. What? 36% cut. So in the overall grand scheme of things, the total cut to the GSC would be a lower proportional cut than to the entirety of undergraduate travel and diversity programming on campus. Secondly, with GSC off of the activity fee, they are not barred in any way from accessing SAC funds for some of their trips as well. That'd be $100 a student going to a maximum number of trips, but they have the access to that as well. So we are not eliminating their ability to have access to SGA funds for travel.
Thank you, Chair Long. Seeing as that was debate in the positive, we're now seeking speeches in the negative. Senator Bannister.
Hello. So I just wanted to come up and stress that I do not think that recently K-State has done enough to speak for communities that do not have enough access to different things on our campus. We have been having movements on campus to try to get more access for people who are disabled. There's been discussions around DEI, and there's discussions around this too. And what disappoints me is I constantly see this body addressing groups of people who have less access to certain services, like the graduate students, pretty much everything else on the service fee, and taking the areas which they do have control of and do benefit from, and taking away their right and ability to access that. And I think this is one of those areas where there is a distinct benefit to the graduate students, where besides the big three entities, the majority of the things on our fee disproportionately only benefit undergraduate students. And I think saying that there is not a actual regulation against graduate students using a lot of the undergrad services is really disingenuous and does not acknowledge the actual fact of the usage that happens by people. And I just really think that part of our job as undergraduates is to respect our fellow peers at K-State who are ahead of us in graduate programs and understand how we'd fill in their position and come together and reconcile it on more. We had so many discussions on this in student services fee, and there was a lot of back and forth. Or Marcus or anyone could tell you on the committee that we had a large amount of discussions, and almost more than even UFM, I would say we had discussions about this, and the committee ultimately decided that this was the right idea. So I would encourage you to talk to someone else who's been on the committee, like Marcus or anyone else, and get more information behind those discussions, because I don't think that this is as simple as undergraduate students are giving away money, and I feel like it's really disingenuous to frame it in that way.
Thank you, Will. Seeing as that was debate in the negative, we're now seeking speeches in the positive. Are there any further speeches in the negative? Senator Kamen.
Hello, sorry to speak twice again in the negative here, but I did promise the graduate students of my own college that I'd speak on their behalf tonight. Especially the one that isn't here. She is currently at a conference right now presenting somewhere she would not have been able to do without funding from grants or other things. But unfortunately, not many people have this opportunity. I'm speaking here tonight on her behalf. She'd like to echo that one of the things that the graduate students struggle with most is the access to this funding. They actually did, some of the grad students in in the Department of Physics, they tried to apply for funding from SGA this year. They were told they were rejected for a couple of reasons. And one of them that they were told was that because they have access through funding through the Graduate Student Council. So if we are going to neglect, or if we're going to strike all funding from the Graduate Student Council, what should we tell those students to do? Are we going to continue to reject them and say, too bad? We sent them to the Graduate Student Council because they have money from us to give to them. Additionally, one more thing is she wanted me to point out that not all, as the echo, not all of the things within here are accessible for all students. One thing, and I know we funded them in the past too, and she wants me to speak on this. I wanted to do Model UN for, because I'm very interested in international diplomacy and politics. But unfortunately, I was unable to join the team because I could not take the class. I could have tried auditing it, but I had my only physics class, the only quantum class that was offered this semester was during the same exact time. I unfortunately was unable to join the team. It's not accessible for every student on campus. Our graduate students are and have been making us a world-class school through their research and educational developments, and they educate our younger classes. She would like me to encourage you all to vote no, as would the rest of the physics graduate students. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeremy. Seeing as that was debate in the negative, we are now seeking speeches in the positive on the amendment. Jake, is it positive or negative debate?
It's negative.
Were there any other speeches in the positive? Okay, Jake, go ahead with negative debate.
I feel like we've had a lot to say on this, so I'll keep it rather short and simple. I can't see how in good faith we can genuinely approve of something that's going to directly impact and directly harm at least a fifth of our university. So for all those reasons, I urge you guys to vote no.
Thanks, Jake. Seeing as that was debate in the negative, we're now seeking further speeches in the positive. Are there any further speeches in the negative? Caucus Leader Kidd.
All right, good evening, everyone. So I had some comments typed up that I just wanted to share with the group, but also kind of want to speak from the heart too. So a number of things. So one, I think just to kind of throw out some numbers, because I'm a big numbers person, I just want to talk about populations. So for the last several years, the graduate student population has actually been growing at K-State, whereas as you may not have known, the undergraduate student population has been negatively impacted and it has been decreasing over these past few years. Are we working on it? Yes, I actually work in the office for the College of Education that does recruitment. So, I mean, we're all working to bring our undergraduate numbers up. But I'm thankful to be in a landscape where our graduate numbers are still really healthy and increasing. Two, what I'd say is that in the Student Services Fee Committee, I was the one that brought up this the suggestion of cutting all these entities proportionately. There's some for the $100,000 that we were told to cut. I thought that was fair. And so the number that we see, not in this legislation here in this document for the amendment, but in the original amendment or in the original document that Chair Phillips shared, that's what that number is. It's essentially the proportional cut of the $100,000 total with looking at the total amount that the Graduate Student Council gets. I think that's fair. I understand that cuts need to happen. I'm not saying that Graduate Student Council shouldn't be cut just because our population is growing as compared to other populations. But I do understand the need for that. But I also think that it's fair to not cut more than that amount because the population is growing. We all have been impacted by graduate students in our classes, our lectures, our labs that we have. We are part of the university lifeblood that keeps the university going. Your professor, your assistant professor, your whatever, they can't necessarily be at everything that they need to be. So that's kind of where graduate students come into play. We've already heard comments from other speakers about how they take undergraduate students with them on trips to different conferences for professional development, you name it. And so I have a big issue with having that fully be cut. When I just think about a common sense place, why am I paying into a privilege fee and which part of that money is going to something that I now have limited to no access to? It's not that I can't utilize funding from any of these other entities, but just being realistic, when I think about the spaces that graduate students are in with our teaching, our research, our other responsibilities, that gives little to no leeway for us to actually effectively utilize some of these other pieces from this specific student activity fee. A quick piece about the cuts as well, just in relation to the total funding landscape. So a previous speaker mentioned in a question about where some of the money comes from for the graduate school. Some of it comes from the president's office, some of it comes from a grant. Those are all things that just kind of want to point out for you all. I don't know the information for myself firsthand, but those are all things that can go away at any point. the job I used to have before working in the College of Ed, I was able to do a lot of different admin things and just looking at a lot of the different numbers of what different offices can support. Those are all being affected by our enrollment. And so I think when we look at funding that could easily be taken away, that's another piece from my perspective as to why this should stay within the fee. Yeah, that's about all I have. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Marcus. Seeing as that was debate in the negative, we're now seeking speeches in the positive on the amendment. Senator Solomon, is this positive debate?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, cool.
I would first like to respond to many of the arguments that have been made by the negative side of this debate. First, one of the biggest ones that have been made is student services fee like largely benefits undergraduate students and is not used much by graduate students. First of all, like this is false. There was one example given that said that one specific like academic competition team was like a 400 level class or below. Like one, graduate students can take that class. And two, if there are genuine like barriers to graduate students being involved in organizations, like those are things we can change because that is illegal. Like we as SGA cannot allow these organizations to do so. So if that is a genuine problem graduate students run into, let us address that. But in the status quo, that is not a thing that has occurred yet. So I think that argument is not like important in this debate. Secondly, graduate students provide other benefits to the university. I agree with this. I don't deny it. I think they provide wonderful teaching. I think they like present wonderful research. The conferences they go to are obviously beneficial, but the funding that is given to them to teach and do other things non-relevant to the like traveling they do to conferences is funded by other things and should not be funded by the GSC. Like the work that graduate students do outside of the context of this conversation with GSC and SGA funding does not matter because we are not the ones who fund those things. And therefore you should not take that into account. Additionally, the benefit to undergraduate students, like via that teaching or other things that graduate students do, is not like tangible nor substantial in an indirect or direct manner. And so once again, taking that into account. Third, I would like to extend the argument that GSC is only being cut 15% right now of overall travel funding, and SAC can provide those funds. Like if this is to pass, we can send this back to committee and like move those funds that were going to the Graduate Student Council back into campus organizations, which would allow all students to apply for all funds to be able to go and travel to places. That is the world we should be in, rather than some organizations being able to apply for some funds and other organizations being able to apply for other funds when all people are paying into this fee. I would also respond to the fact that we are impacting a fifth of our K-State student population by making this cut. All of the cuts up here are impacting the entire population of K-State. If we agree that cutting has a negative impact and therefore we should not cut it all, we have to remove every single one of these cuts on this page. We are impacting students regardless of what we do. This debate is not about whether we're impacting them or not. It's whether like the entity itself should be on the Student Services Fee Committee. Once again, I go back to the fact that graduate students and the graduate college and the Graduate Student Council are wonderful things, but Student Governing Association should not fund them through the through the service of the Student Services Fee. I would also like to extend the argument that like GSC should not be classified as Student Services Fee entity. There were no responses to that by any of the negative speakers. If that remains, you should vote solely on this amendment. Yes, because that is a sole reason why the Student Services Fee is defined that way. GSC does not fit those regulations or that criteria, and so you should vote yes on this amendment. I would also like to extend the fact that the Student Services Fee cut the College of, or the School of Architecture, Planning and Design in the past based on the same merits I provided today. If past committees made these cuts with the arguments I'm presenting to you, and for some reason we don't choose to do that, then do we need to go back and reinstate the architectural school? Do we need to choose some other solution? Like we are essentially contradicting ourselves as not only like an organization, but as a committee. And I think that is incorrect as for us to do as a governing body. And finally, I think the most significant thing is this debate is about the question, it's not about the question of whether we're like abandoning GSC or anything like that. I don't think we're doing that. The question is whether other entities should suffer more than GSC. If we were to not pass this amendment, GSC would be cut 3% of all of the funding they have for travel to go to conferences. That is 9 times smaller than a significant number of other cuts on this fee. The DPF committee, or DPF, for example. Thank you.
Chair Pondello.
I move to extend the speaker's time by 3 minutes.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to extend the speaker's time by 3 minutes. Are there any objections? Senator Blood, is that an objection?
It is.
Okay, we'll take a hand vote on the motion to extend the speaker's time. All those in favor, please raise your placards now. All opposed, same sign. That failed. Thanks, Audrey. Seeing as that was debate in the negative, we are now, or positive, excuse me, we're now seeking further speeches in the negative. Senator Rogers,
Second.
it's been moved and seconded to call the previous question, which is in order at this time. Senator Bannister, go ahead.
We had determined that the amount to the conference cannot be allocated by other SJ committees because we only allocate up to $200.
Can you explain what you mean by that?
Because like, you want to talk about, we discussed them getting funds from other places in SGA, but we determined that it wasn't enough to cover the cost of because the allocation.
I understand what you're saying, Will. You can get a maximum of $100 per person from the Student Allocations Committee. And that, well, correct me if I'm wrong, is not enough for one person to attend a conference after travel, conference registration, lodging, et cetera.
Just registration.
Just registration is not even enough, according to Senator Bannister. Anyway. Motion to move to the previous question. Please raise your placards now. And all opposed, same sign. Like, is it 2/3?
Yeah.
Okay, that motion did fail. That was not 2/3. And with that, we are still seeking speeches in the negative. Senator Morello.
Hi, guys. I've never actually spoken here before. I am a little biased because I am a grad student. I'm a 5th year. I'm a physics PhD student. I'm a year away from graduating. There seems to be some confusion about numbers, so I just want to clear things up. I am going to an electromagnetic and light scattering conference in May, this coming May. So the conference itself, $350 just to present. I have to present because this is like the niche conference in my field. This is basically how everyone gets jobs. So if I don't really go to this conference, it doesn't bode well for me in the career field. So it's $350 just to be able to give a talk. It is in Spain. Flights to Spain out of Kansas City on average, $1,500. It has taken place at a hotel over the course of a week. You don't have to stay in the hotel, but if you did stay in the hotel, it's $100 a night. So currently this conference is over $2,000, well over $2,000. Luckily, my advisor does have money that's subsidizing it, but I'm a grad student. I don't get paid a lot. No grad student gets paid a lot, even if they're getting money from a government grant, even if they're funded outside the university. So $100, not even a night at the hotel, not even a 10th of the plane ticket. So I just want to let you know that like the grad student funding is incredibly beneficial. And it's not like it's a crazy huge amount. I think it's capped at $750 for an international conference. And even then you might not get the whole $750, but that money can cover the registration to the conference or at least the travel to get there. So I just want to let you know what these numbers are, so you know exactly why other SGA entities might not be helpful here. Thanks.
Thanks, Claudia. Seeing as that was debate in the negative, we are now seeking speeches in the positive on the amendment. Are there any further speeches in the negative? Director Whitney?
So I'm here to basically provide a little bit more information and also approach this from a different perspective as well. Just so you know that the funding that would be allocated for the Graduate Student Council in the original, 98% of the funds that are allocated are utilized for our travel funds. So 98% of graduate students' abilities to travel to conferences comes from that exact number. So by eliminating that, you're eliminating more than just 15% of a budget or 3% of an overall budget or whatever. The other thing I will say is, also moving this, my question is twofold. I have a question about why it's on here to begin with, if there's also going to be this why we're here debating it. But my thought is, if you're going to just take us off of it and keep the money, can we keep the money and put it somewhere else? Now, you're saying to put it in the student allocation committee, and we've also mentioned that, you know, only each student can get $100. That $750 that was just mentioned, that is what you can get for the entire academic year. Basically what would happen is you would almost get that amount within 2 conferences. I myself have been to one conference, which was an international conference here in the States, in which I presented information on behalf of Kansas State University. That was the amount of $450. I was also given another one for only $100 because the max that you've allowed is $550 for the year. That $100 covers maybe half of one of my night stays. I'm a non-traditional student. I'm a first-gen graduate, and I'm a father of twins. I am here at K-State in my first year as a PhD student, paying with student loans, because not every department in every academic unit in every college has the funds to provide student assistantships for graduate students. So I'm already here committed to the beliefs in K-State, the fact that it is an R1 research institution. And where does that research come from? Us graduate students. I'm here for that, so I'm willing to sacrifice $20,000 this year on knowing that I'm going to have to deal with that with my kids who are 2.5 years old. So for me, it's more than just numbers. It's more than just situations. And I understand the other side of this. But it needs to be more than just say, get rid of it all entirely, or put it into a spot where in GSC, as it currently stands, I can get $750 for international travel. But if it goes to this other group, I'm only allowed $100 at a time. That just doesn't make any sense to me. Thank you.
Thanks, Zane. Seeing as that was debate in the negative, we're now seeking speeches in the positive on the amendment. Senator Griffith.
I move the previous question.
It's been moved and seconded to call the previous question. Those in favor, please raise your placards now. All opposed, same sign. Okay, that motion did carry. We're going to go ahead and move into a hand vote on the amendment. All those in favor of the amendment, please raise your placards now. And all opposed, same sign. Okay, that amendment did fail. Thanks, everybody. We're going to move back into debate on on Bill 87. I had called for speeches in the negative and there were no speeches in the negative, so I'm now seeking speeches in the positive. Chair Phillips.
All right, everyone. I really appreciate the debate tonight. I know that, both amendments got voted down, but I really appreciate having debate on student services fee legislation. This stuff that we do with the student services fee really impacts students, and far too often we see it go through Senate with no debate, no second thought. And so I really do appreciate the fact that this body took time to evaluate that today and really do your own homework and ultimately debate this issue. So I really appreciate that. However, I think that tonight's results really show the true work of the Student Services Fee Committee. Again, like I mentioned, the committee put in a lot of really hard work into this legislation, multiple hours, lots and lots of hard meetings. Our committee meets the longest out of any committee out there. Sorry, maybe with the exception of Jacob sometimes. But I really appreciate everyone's hard work, especially my committee members. So thank you all again. And as we can see tonight, I really think that the best version of this bill to pass is the one that's presented in front of you today. So I would strongly encourage a yes vote on this legislation. Thank you.
Thanks, Blake. Seeing as that was debate in the positive on the legislation, we're now seeking speeches in the negative. Chair Pondello.
You're tall. Okay, anyways, I cannot in good faith vote in favor of this just because on this line item, the goal was 100,000, DPF was 55,000. I know that you guys can understand math. That's a little bit over than half. We cannot rely on DPF as a crutch. I gave a presentation at the beginning of Senate. That was many moons ago. but it stated that I allocated 145,000. With this money that is given right now, if we were to do this next year, I would not be able to fund all of the events that I did. And I believe that cutting us 36% is very outlandish, very not sensible, just because if this is the first year back after COVID, stuff going on, but people are going to request more. People are going to come back and say, hey, I got this money, let's try again. So in my sense, I cannot vote yes on this due to the fact that it is putting the future committee in jeopardy. Also, after the 3 years, the reserves will be high and dry. Right now, what is supplementing the cut is reserves. After 3 years, DPF is not going to be increased at the rate of other entities' line items. And I think that should be into consideration. Right now, we've looked at different entities that have been cut egregiously in the years past, and we are redoing work to review them. Because why? Because we thought we had to hit a number, and that number was hit, and now they are suffering. I think you cannot vote in favor of this, knowing that there will be work in the future.
Thanks, Joseph. Seeing as that was debate in the negative, we're now seeking speeches in the positive. Are there any further speeches in the negative? And are there any further speeches at all? Okay, seeing none, we'll go ahead and move into a roll call vote on Bill 87.
Anderson,
Yes.
Bannister,
Yeah.
Barron,
Yes, by proxy.
Bellamy,
Yes.
Flood,
Yes.
Broughton,
Yes.
Brown,
No.
Compton,
Yes, by proxy.
Foy,
No.
Questa,
No.
Dennis,
Abstain.
DePaz, Dole,
Yes.
Griffith,
Yes.
Heatherman,
Yes.
Hoffman,
Yep.
Hubnig,
Yes.
Hammond,
Yes.
Kappelman,
Yes.
Gershon, Kidd,
Yes.
Vermer,
Yes.
Hensy,
Yes.
Long,
Yes.
Middaugh, Morello, Murphy,
Yes, by proxy.
Moretti, Navarro,
Yes, by proxy.
O'Malley,
Yes.
Bowery,
Yes.
Pelton,
Yes.
Phillips,
Yes.
Pochard,
Yes.
Pondillo,
No.
Rogers,
Yeah.
Syatt Carly,
Yes.
Syatt Nick,
Yes.
Salmon,
Abstain.
Schweier,
Yes.
Spindler,
Yes.
Stout,
Yes.
Strout, Suchanik,
Yes.
Talbert,
Yes.
Timon,
Yes, by proxy.
Thomas,
Yes.
Bulgamore,
Yes, by proxy.
and Wolf.
Yes.
Sprout was a yes. Going back to the passes. Hubnig,
Abstain by proxy.
Bill 87 will pass on a vote of 38 to 4-3.
Okay, thanks, everybody. It might be prudent to entertain a motion to recess for 5 minutes, if anyone has a motion. Vice Chair Hoffman.
I move to have a recess for 5-ish minutes.
Okay, everybody, please be back by no later than 8:40.
I'll be back.
It's good as my future. Like,
You did? Okay, I don't realize, yeah. Also, did you see the? Yeah. So on one hand. Areas where we have- it's just a part of- But maybe not sure.
Well, yeah, I was gonna talk about,
They can use this. Well, as like. Sounds like. What we not believe. That's good. We need to do this. I'll do the.
Okay, thank you, everybody. Obviously, we just concluded final action on Bill 87, so we'll go ahead and move into final action on Bill 90, if the author will please come forward. Jacob, you are the author of Bill 90.
Yes.
Thank you for accepting blame, Lance.
Were any changes made?
No changes have been made.
You have first rights to debate.
Excellent. So like I said, there's no actual, any additional money being spent here. Nothing is really changing except for we are moving money around to change percentages to act in statutory compliance. I think it is frankly silly, but I need to be able to fund all the rest of the clubs we're about to introduce. If we don't do this, every allocation and introduction now cannot happen because it's illegal. So please vote yes.
Thanks, Jacob. Seeing as that was debate in the positive, we're now seeking speeches in the negative. Are there any further speeches in the positive? And are there any further speeches at all? Okay, seeing none, we'll go ahead and move into a roll call vote on Bill 90.
Anderson. Bannister,
Yes.
Barron. Bellamy,
Yes.
Blood,
Yeah.
Broughton,
Yeah.
Brown,
Yes.
Compton,
Yes.
Coy,
Yes.
Cuesta,
Yes.
Dennis,
Yes.
DePaz, Dole, Griffith,
Yes.
Heatherman, Hoffman,
Yes.
Hubnig,
Yes, Chair Proxy.
Kamen,
Yes.
Kappelman,
Yes.
Gershon, Kidd, Kermer,
Yes.
Kenzie,
Yes.
Long,
Yes.
Morello, Murphy,
Yes, by proxy.
Moretti, Navarro,
Yes, by proxy.
O'Malley,
Yes.
Howery,
Yes.
Pelton,
Yes.
Phillips,
Yes.
Pilchard,
Yes.
Pondillo,
Yes.
Rogers,
Yes.
Syatt Carly,
Yes.
Syatt Nick,
Yes.
Salmon,
Yes.
Schweier,
Yes.
Spindler,
Yes.
Stout,
Yes.
Strout,
Yes.
Suchanik,
Yes.
Halbert,
Yes.
Timon,
Yes, by proxy.
Thomas,
Yes.
Bulgamore, and Wolf.
Yes.
Bill 90 will pass 41 to 0.
Thanks, everybody. Seeing as that was final action on Bill 90, we'll go ahead and move into final action on Bill 91. If the author will please come forward. Were any changes made?
Yes, some changes were made in committee. See, we changed a little bit of the whereas clauses to be more specific. We added spring 2022 to reflect a date and time when that occurred. Other than that, no.
Okay, perfect. You have first rights to debate.
Yeah, so I think this piece of legislation is very important just because it essentially gives tools and opportunities for the next chair and the next committee to be essentially one that is in good standing. It talks about hosting workshops to help us spend funds that we allocate. It also enforces the committee to frame a report. This report can help out, changes in leadership from different MSOs, different student groups. It also talks about writing commendations, which I already do, but I think DEI should really focus on student groups that applaud diversity at our body and our institution. So I would suggest a vote yes.
Thanks, Joseph. Seeing as that was debate in the positive, we're now seeking speeches in the negative.
Mr. Speaker. Oh, I have an amendment.
Come on up. Bryce, just read my inbox.
Sorry, I was waiting for.
Yeah, Mr. Speaker, I have an amendment.
Keep scrolling. There it is. All right, so this amendment just strikes that I section, just requiring the committee to write commendations to student groups.
Is there a second?
Second.
Go ahead, Blake. You have first rights to debate.
All right, I don't want to take too much time on this. This is just something personally that I am not a huge fan of, is the requirement of writing commendations. There's been a lot of various leadership in the past who has required commendations to be written at whether it be at the senator level, at the college level, whatever the case may be. And personally, I think that this just dampens the impact of each commendation. It's kind of like inflation, which we've all dealt with a lot. If you have Sorry, RJ. If you have too much of something going on a lot of the time, the impact of it dampens over time. And so I think having a committee whose job it is to write commendations ultimately lowers the impact of those commendations in the future. Additionally, I think it makes it harder for the individual senator to write commendations. They'll see commendations coming from a certain committee all the time. And so I don't think that they'll be very incentivized to write their own commendations. And so that's just something that I've always had an objection to, is just requiring commendations to be written. So this isn't something that I'm going to come up here and debate a whole bunch and try to recruit a whole bunch of votes for. I just wanted to throw this up here because I'm just not a fan of requiring commendations. So with that, I encourage a vote yes on the amendment.
Thanks, Blake. Seeing as that was debate in the positive on the amendment, we're now seeking speeches in the negative. Chair Pondello.
Hey, guys. Once again, Blake is tall and I have to lower it. I'm feeling like Marta right now. Love you, babes. Love you, babes. No, that was not a read. I love you. I love you. Carrying on. I do not believe that this is worthwhile. At the end of the day, the previous speaker is not part of my committee. I don't know if they've ever written out a commendation. And at the end of the day, it doesn't say how many commendations that the committee has to write. It just says that the committee should write commendations. And I think commendations are really essential to my committee, just because with accommodations, we can recognize the fact that student groups have done good work, and that's the reason of accommodations. If you don't like accommodations, maybe you should get rid of them. I do think that writing accommodations does bridge the gap between SGA to MSOs and events that they are hosting. And I think ultimately having the committee do this would essentially give them an upper hand in communicating with funding, but also creating those connections to possibly get different people in this room, in this body, to represent essentially students. So writing accommodations has a big part in relationships with different MSOs, which is multicultural student organizations. So I'd encourage a vote no on this. And again, I don't want to make this a long thing, so it's not worthwhile to, argue about, but I still just encourage a good no.
Thanks, Joseph. Seeing as that was debate in the negative on the amendment, we're now seeking speeches in the positive. Senator Griffith.
Hello, I just kind of wanted to come up here and throw my 2 cents into the mix, because I know that I feel that if I am given something but the person giving it to me is expected to do the thing that dampers the level of the gift. And so this commendation is meant to be, hey, you did good. So here's an official resolution saying that, yeah, we at SGA think that you did good. Whereas if a committee is required to, even in a more, you should probably do this kind of way instead of a, you need to do this number, it still lessens the impact because it gives a certain level of, this is expected. And so makes commendations less special, makes them less, you did good, and more of, you did good enough that I need to that I can recognize you because I kind of need to.
Thanks, Jolene. Seeing as that was debate in the positive on the amendment, we're now seeking speeches in the negative. Chair Pondello.
Hey, guys. So I just do want to reference again that this is something that SGA should do. We should commend different groups of bodies for doing good work. We already do that. Making a requirement would therefore give more action and more incentive to fire DEI to charge and include diversity. And is a good gap bridger between SGA and MSOs. We want MSOs to come to us. We want MSOs to do different things with SGA in partnership with SGA. And the one way that we can do that is commending them on their good actions. This isn't a political strategy. This isn't something to like damper the results of accommodation, but is to simply encourage like, hey, we see you. We understand you're doing good work. The work that you do is hard work, especially in this institution. And I think that commendations are the heart and soul of SGA, ASU. Thank you.
Thanks, Joseph. Seeing as that was debate in the negative on the amendment, we're now seeking speeches in the positive. Senator Bannister. Go ahead.
The subpoint is under a shall, not a should.
So the point Will is making is that higher up in the legislation, it says the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee shall. So by putting the text, write commendations, it means that they shall write commendations, which means that they are required to write commendations. Thank you for that point of information, Will. Senator Quest says this debate in the positive.
Correct.
Granted.
Okay, yeah, so this should be pretty simple, but I would agree with previous positive speakers that requiring to make accommodations kind of dampens the point of doing that. It's like when you're forced to make an apology as a child, the person that you're apologizing to knows that it's not sincere. And so they take it with a grain of salt and they don't actually hear the words that you're saying. So I think accommodations are great and we should continue to do them for these organizations, but I don't think that we should be required to. We should do it kind of when it seems most impactful. So I would encourage voting in favor of the amendment. Thank you.
Thanks, Carson. Seeing as that was debate in the positive on the amendment, we're now seeking speeches in the negative. Senator Solomon.
I think I'd like to make 2 points. One, referring to the point of information. This is a shall, not a should, which means the committee can write these commendations to individuals, but it is not by like any schedule or metric or expectation. They have to constantly do this. Additionally, I'm of the opinion that when this committee writes commendations, that is actually an incentive for individuals outside that committee to write commendations because like they see things happening. They'd like, oh, I have this organization I'm a part of. Let me write a commendation for them. I think it is more of a like facilitator of commendation writing than it is a negator of commendation writing. And I think like it allows the committee to decide when they want to write those commendations and it encourages future committees to do the same. I don't think this is a like you have to do it all the time, but this is a reminder to do it sometimes. Thank you.
Thanks, RJ. Seeing as that was debate in the negative on the amendment, we're now seeking speeches in the positive.
Point of information.
Chair Phillips.
Per the KSU HBA bylaws, in the judicial section, shall is used in the imperative sense. And imperative on the internet is defined as is defined as giving an authoritative command. Just for the definition.
Thank you for that definition, Chair Phillips. I'm still seeking speeches in the positive on the amendment. Senator Coy.
Okay, hello. So I just want to add emphasis on what some previous speakers have said on the if they are required to write commendations, how that kind of dampens getting one, because anybody can look at what this committee is supposed to be doing. And if they're required to give a commendation, it's not a clap because we're impressed. It's a clap because we're required to, because you did something, and commendation should be something that you do when you are impressed, and they shouldn't have to be required.
Thanks, Riley. Before I seek a speech in the negative, there is a lot of crosstalk in the room right now, and individuals are having a hard time hearing speakers. So if we could keep the conversations to a minimum while there's someone at the podium, I would appreciate that. But I'm seeking a speech in the negative. Senator Cuesta?
Previous question.
It is not. And I'm still seeking speeches in the negative. Are there any further speech, Chair Pondillo? Well, you can, no, there are no amendments to amendments. I'm sorry. Were there any speeches in the negative? And are there any speeches in the positive? Are there any further speeches at all? Senator Heatherman, is this positive or negative?
How many people were in the room when the Student Engagement Committee existed? The Student Engagement Committee was dissolved during the 2018-2019 SGA term. And this committee was an absolute train wreck. Okay? It served essentially all the same but broader goals of the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee. And it also had the proposed, what is that? Nine different responsibilities of the committee. 9 different responsibilities specifically legislated in the bylaws, and yet multiple successive chairs couldn't steer the committee. Ultimately, the leaders who are selected to run committees should have a somewhat abstract, some specific pieces that they need to follow and how they guide and lead their committee, detailing 8, 9 specific things unless there are statutory like requirements for the purposes of funding, so forth, regulations is just entirely unnecessary in my opinion, and is more restricting than it necessarily allows for creativity. So for that reason, I'll be voting yes on the amendment.
Thanks, Hannah. Seeing as that was debate in the positive, we're now seeking speeches in the negative. Are there any further speeches in the positive? Per KSUSGA bylaws, there are no amendments to amendments. For KSUSGA governing documents somewhere. Brian shook his head. Anyway. Speeches in the positive or any speeches at all, I think is what I was on. Seeing none, we'll move into a hand vote on the amendment. All those in favor, please raise your placards now. Proxies raised 2. All opposed, same sign. Okay, that amendment will carry. So we'll go ahead and proceed with debate on the amended piece of legislation. So Bryce, if you could just leave that on the screen for me. I believe we were on negative debate. Are there any speeches in the negative? Are there any further speeches in the positive? And are there any further speeches at all? Seeing none, we'll move into a roll call vote on Bill 91.
Anderson,
Yes.
Bannister,
Yes.
Barron, Bellamy,
Yes.
Flood, Broughton,
Yep.
Brown,
Yep.
Compton, Foy,
Yes.
Cuesta,
Yes.
Dennis,
Yes.
DePaz, Dole,
Yes.
Glasscock, Griffith.
Yeah.
Was that a yes?
Yeah.
Heatherman,
No.
Hoffman,
Yes.
Hubnig,
Pass 5 right.
Hammond,
Yes.
Kappelman,
Yes.
Kirshen, Kidd,
Yes.
Kermer,
Yes.
Tenzie,
Pass.
Long,
Yes.
Morello, Murphy,
No by proxy.
Moretti, Navarro,
Yes by proxy.
O'Malley,
Yes.
Lowry, Pelton,
Yes.
Phillips,
No.
Pilchard,
Abstain.
Bondillo,
Yes.
Rogers, Syatt Carly, Syatt Nick,
Yes.
Solomon,
Yes.
Schweier,
Yes.
Spindler,
Yes.
Stout,
Yes.
Stroud,
Pass.
Suchanik,
Yes.
Talbert,
Yes.
Timon,
Yes by proxy.
Thomas,
Yes.
Wolgamore, and Wolf.
Yes.
Going back to the passes. Hubnig,
Yes by proxy.
Kenzie,
No.
Morello, and Stroud.
Yes.
Okay. Bill 91 will pass on a vote of 39 to 4 to 1.
Okay, thank you, everybody. Seeing as that was final action on Bill 91, we'll go ahead and move into final action on Bill 92. If the author will please come forward. Were any changes made?
Yes. Again, in the whereas clauses, it changed to spring 2022 to reflect a more precise change. And then on line 27, I crossed out Center for Student Involvement Event Coordinator shall. We don't have that position anymore. Just to clear up any documents, because that is what this document is for. Also on, let me find it. 108, I added food and non-alcoholic drinks, just because I want to clear it up that we are not funding alcoholic drinks to individuals. And I think that is it.
I have one correction, Joseph.
Yeah, go for it.
On line 28, you struck shall. That just needs to be unstruck.
Okay.
I'll fix it.
Yeah,
I'll fix it. Chair Phillips.
Chris, can you scroll down? On that non-alcoholic part, is that already in the bylaws or is that being added?
Oh, the non-alcoholic is being added.
I will italicize it. I caught that too, Blake. Coordinator Lynn, is that a question of privilege?
Just a grammar.
Just text me about it.
Okay.
Through Senate Ops.
Joseph, you have first rights to debate.
Thank you. Yeah, so this is just clearing up a lot of stuff. Like we don't have that CSI events coordinator anymore. It's just making stuff more clear and concise, especially with food and drinks. A lot of people came up to me asking me if we fund drinks and just clearing up things. Bada bing, bada boom. I'm done.
Thanks, Joseph. Seeing as that was debate in the positive, we're now seeking speeches in the negative. Are there any further speeches in the positive? And are there any further speeches at all? Seeing none, we'll move into a roll call vote on Bill 92.
Anderson,
Yes.
Bannister,
Yes.
Barron,
Yes by proxy.
Bellamy,
Yes.
Blood,
Yes.
Broughton,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Compton, Coy,
Yes.
Cuesta,
Yes.
Dennis,
Yes.
DePaz, Dole,
Yes.
Glasscock, Griffith,
Yes.
Heatherman,
Yes.
Hoffman,
Yes.
Hubnig,
Yes by proxy.
Kemen,
Yes.
Kappelman,
Yes.
Kirshen, Kidd,
Yes.
Kermer, Kenzie,
Yes.
Long,
Yes.
Morello, Murphy, Moretti,
Proxy.
Moretti, Navarro,
Yes by proxy.
O'Malley,
Yes.
Lowry,
Yes.
Pelton,
Yes.
Phillips,
Yes.
Pilchard,
Yes.
Bondillo,
Yes.
Rogers,
Yeah.
Syatt Carly,
Yes.
Syatt Nick,
Yes.
Salmon,
Yes.
Schweier,
Yes.
Spindler,
Yes.
Stout,
Yes.
Stroud,
Yes.
Suchanik,
Yes.
Halbert,
Yes.
Timon,
By proxy.
Thomas,
Yes.
Fockelmore,
Yes, by proxy.
and Wolf.
Yes.
Bill 92 will pass on a vote of 45 to 0.
Thanks, everybody. Seeing as that was final action on Bill 92, we'll go ahead and move into final action on Bill 93. If the author will please come forward. Were any changes made?
No changes made.
You have first rights to debate.
All right, everyone. This is the decrease of the recreational services maintenance reserve account. Again, this decision was almost purely just out of financial necessity, just being able to align our budget with our revenues. The rec does have alternative sources of funding in the event that they were to experience some maintenance emergency. General surplus funds can be used for that. So there is money available. And additionally, if we need to, the Student Services Fee Committee can re-review this. But this was at the request of the rec for the amount that we needed to cut. They preferred that we eliminated their maintenance and R&R accounts for the next 3 fiscal years and tried to limit the impact to their operations account. So this is in line with what the rec requested, and they're okay with this change. And this was unanimous from the committee. I strongly encourage you to vote yes.
Thanks, Blake. Seeing as that was debate in the positive on Bill 93, we're now seeking speeches in the negative. Senator Blood,
I move to bulk roll call bills 93, 94, 95.
Second.
it's been moved and seconded to bulk roll call Bills 93, 94, 95. Are there any objections? Seeing none, it is so moved. Blake? Bill 94?
Debate on 93.
Oh. Is there any further debate in the negative? Are there any further speeches in the positive? Is there any further debate at all? Seeing none. Blake, Bill 94, were any changes made?
No changes made.
You have first rights to debate.
All right, same exact thing here. This account, the R&R account, it's used for some of those smaller maintenance expenses such as treadmill repair, different things like that that aren't really structural. And so this, again, they received about $10,000, a little bit over. They received a little over $10,000 for that per year. They believe that they can operate off of the amount of money that they currently have in that account for the next 3 fiscal years. Again, if they had some kind of emergency, we are able to allocate some money as well. So not permanent. This will be re-reviewed in 3 years as well. And hopefully money will be given back to them.
Thanks, Blake. Seeing as that was debate in the positive on Bill 93, we're now seeking Bill 94. We're now seeking speeches in the negative. Are there any further speeches in the positive? Are there any further speeches at all? Okay, seeing none. Blake, Bill 95, were any changes made?
No changes made.
You have first rights to debate.
All right, last one, folks. This is the decrease of the rec's operating budget. So if you look at this total decrease, it's about a 3.3% reduction to the rec's budget, which they felt they would be able to sustain over the next 3 fiscal years. Again, the overall goal when working with the rec was to minimize that impact to the operating budget. So we feel that this does the best job of balancing the needs of the student services fee financially, as well as meeting the rec's priorities as well. So I would strongly encourage a yes vote on all 3 pieces of this legislation. This is something that we worked really hard on, met with the rec multiple times for, and ultimately this was an understanding that was come to from both parties. So I strongly encourage a yes vote.
Thanks, Blake. Seeing as that was debate in the positive on Bill 95, we're now seeking speeches in the negative. Senator Blood,
I move to suspend the rules and approve bills 93 through 95.
Second.
we have to take a roll call vote on a motion to suspend the rules, so take it away, Juan. Yeah, you do.
Okay, folks, this is a roll call vote on a motion to suspend the rules. And
To the motion to suspend the rules.
Point of information, if we just take one roll call vote,
It's functionally the same thing.
yeah.
Yeah.
Wait, question of.
Senator Ari, caucus leader Ari.
If we suspend the rules, can we do it on the rest of those?
No.
All right, never. Withdraw my move.
Senator Blunt has withdrawn his motion. We'll move forward with a roll call vote.
all right, folks, this is a bulk roll call on bills 93, 94, 95. You can say yes to all, no to all, yes to 93, not to 94 and 95, or any combination along those lines. Anderson,
Yes, to all.
Bannister.
All right, all right, all right.
Is that yes to all?
Yeah.
Barron. Bellamy,
Yes to all.
Blood,
Yeah. To all.
Broughton,
Yes, to all.
Brown,
Yes to all.
Compton,
Yes. to all by proxy.
Hoy,
Yes. to all.
Questa,
Yes, to all.
Dennis,
Yes to all.
DePaz, Dole,
Yes, to all.
Glasscock, Griffith,
Yes to all.
Heatherman,
Yes to all.
Hoffman,
Yes, to all.
Cubnig,
Yes, to all by proxy.
Cammon,
Yes, to all.
Appleman,
Yes, to all.
Persian, Kidd,
Yes, to all.
Hermer,
Yes, to all.
Kenzie,
Yes, to all.
Long,
Yes, to all.
Morello,
Yes.
Murphy,
Yes, to all by proxy.
Moretti, Navarro,
Yes, to all by proxy.
O'Malley,
Yes, to all.
Howery, Pelton,
Yes, to all.
Phillips,
Yes, to all.
Pilchard,
Yes, to all.
Pondillo,
Yes, to all.
Rogers, Syatt Carly,
Yes to all.
Syatt Nig,
Yes, to all.
Solomon,
Yes, to all.
Schweier,
Yes, to all.
Spindler,
Yes, to all.
Stout,
Yes, to all.
Strout,
Yes, to all.
Suchanik,
Yes to all.
Culver,
Yes, to all.
Timmon,
Yes, to all by proxy.
Thomas,
Yes to all.
Oldmore,
Yes, to all by proxy.
and Wolf.
Yes to all.
Okay, bills 93, 94, 95 will each pass on a vote of 45 to 0.
Okay, thanks, everybody. Seeing as that was final action on bills 94, 93, 94, 95, we'll go ahead and move into final action on resolution 60. If the author will please come forward. Were any changes made?
Yes, in committee, under the first whereas clause, there was added, one, it didn't get added on the agenda, but it was basically that whatever the accessibility plan, basically saying under that. I don't remember what the words were because I wasn't the one who added it, but that got added and that was never sent.
Okay, I'll make sure that gets added before we certify it. But you have first rights to debate.
Alrighty, well, this is just a continuation of what happened, of what I discussed last week. Basically how there are bike lanes on campus and they are not very well known. Their in-ground markers are almost always covered in dirt and are disgusting and are also really hard to see when you're moving fast. And even certain areas that are bike lanes, like there's this one area up by Cardwell where that is considered a bike lane, even though that is one of the most heavily foot travel places on campus that is heavily foot traveled. I have seen multiple people get hit by bikes and scooters while walking on that area. Multiple times, both semesters, all while walking in that area because it's both a bike lane and a heavily traveled footpath. And so this is basically just saying that the university needs to redesign the bike lanes to be better. And that's all I have.
Thanks, Jolene. Seeing as that was debate in the positive, we're now seeking speeches in the negative. Are there any further speeches in the positive? And are there any further speeches at all? Okay, seeing none, we'll move into a hand vote on resolution 60. All those in favor, please raise your placards. Proxies raised 2. All opposed, same sign. That motion or that resolution will carry. And with that, we'll go ahead and move into final action on resolution 61. If the author will please come forward. Were any changes made?
Yes, so on line 11, we just added
just reference to our fall 2022 survey that the Strategic Oversight Committee did, just to add some cohesiveness to the legislation.
Okay, you have first rights to debate.
I think this is a really important bill or resolution for us to pass. A lot of people don't know what all the parking services do for us. And I think having increased education on that will improve the lives of students and for those that work in the parking services department. Thank you.
Thanks, Brady. Seeing as that was debate in the positive on the resolution, we're now seeking speeches in the negative. Are there any further speeches in the positive? And are there any further speeches at all? Okay, seeing none, we'll move into a hand vote on resolution 61. All those in favor, please raise your placards now. Proxies raised 2. All opposed, same sign. That resolution will carry. And with that, we'll go ahead and move into final action on resolution 62. If the author will please come forward. Were any changes made?
No, that's not true. Small modification to one of the last whereas clauses. We talk about how students need knowledge about their courses to succeed. It would suggest that we add to make informed decisions. That's all.
I will make sure that that change is reflected.
Thank you.
You have first rights to debate.
There is no good reason why any student should be without their syllabus on the night before their classes. We should have a policy that governs that sort of thing. That's all.
Thanks, Nick. Seeing as that was debate in the positive, we're now seeking speeches in the negative. Are there any further speeches in the positive? Chair Phillips?
Sorry, less of a debate, but something that I just wanted to point out. On Tuesday, we are in the College of Business, we had our Dean Student Advisory Council meeting, and I had got to have a really good discussion about this with Dean Gwinner. And he really mentioned that having a 1 week prior deadline for course syllabus is actually a real possibility and is something that they could probably do. So this is something that I've been really excited about. So I just wanted to get up and share that and really encourage you to vote yes for this, because this could really have an impact, especially if you're in the College of Business. So vote yes.
Thanks, Blake. Seeing as that was debate in the positive, we're now seeking speeches in the negative. Are there any further speeches in the positive? And are there any further speeches at all? Okay, seeing none, we'll move into a hand vote on resolution 62. All those in favor, please raise your placards now. Proxies raised 2. All opposed, same sign. That resolution will carry. And with that, we'll go ahead and move into introduction of allocations. Is there a motion to consider the allocations? Chair Long.
I move to the allocations. Second.
Awesome. First up, we have Bill 96. This is a fiscal year 2023 student allocation to Alpha Phi Alpha. They requested 590 and were recommended $500 for travel to the Midwest Regional Conference. Next, we have Bill 97. This is the fiscal year 2023 student allocation to Chem E Car. If you were like me and just read that word all caps and thought it was Cheem, it is not, it is Chem E. They requested $810 and were recommended $500 for travel to the AICHE. AICHE. All right. Mid-America Regional Chem E Car Competition. Next up, we have Bill 98. This is the fiscal year 2023 student allocation to the Engineering and Medicine and Biology Society. They requested $700 and were recommended $700 for travel to the Design of Medical Devices Conference. Next up, we have Bill 99, the fiscal year 2023 student allocation to Engineers Without Borders KSU chapter. They requested $800 and recommended $800 for the regional conference, travel to the regional conference. And we have Bill 100. Ooh, the fiscal year 2023. I'll allow it. I'll allow it. The fiscal year 2023 student allocation to the International Coordinating Council. They requested $400 and were recommended $265 for International Week 2023 parade. And we have Bill 101, the fiscal year 2023 student allocation to Kappa Delta Chi Sorority Incorporated. They requested $1,000 and were recommended $1,000 to travel to the Central Regional Conference. And we have Bill 102, the fiscal year 2023 student allocation to the Pre-Dental Club. They requested $1,000 and were recommended $1,000 for the Kansas Mission of Mercy. And last but not least, we have Bill 103, fiscal year 2023 student allocation to the Sexuality and Gender Alliance. They requested $1,000 and were recommended $700 for the Transforming Gender Conference. Were there any questions or corrections for the allocations? Senator Blood.
On Bill 97, line 8, can we please change travel allocations committee to students?
Yes, we can. Are there any further questions or corrections? Awesome. Seeing none, we have exhausted our legislative agenda for the evening. Thanks for bearing with us on that, everybody. We'll go ahead and move into our second open period for the evening. Are there any second open period speakers tonight? Caucus Leader Kidd.
Okay, I'll keep things very brief. So quick show of hands, how many of us have a card? As in like a four-wheel thing. Okay. Great. So now bonus question, how many of us have used the Adabus before? I have not, so I'm gonna put my hand down. Okay, a good number of us. Awesome. So the reason why I'm up here today in our second open period is I wanted to talk about just a quick project that the Student Services Fee has been working on. So a few weeks ago, we were able to meet with folks that run the Flint Hills Adabus. And so if you don't know, they're the buses that have the ATA in big letters logoed on the buses that transport people around the city. So with that, there's been funding from the university to allow that to really help and support current students at K-State. That funding is going away. And so with the information that we got from the folks that coordinate the Adabus, me personally, I just had a hard time distinguishing what was like good, rich, valuable data versus what was data that is reliable and whatnot. And so that for me personally kind of sparked this idea of like, why don't we try and create like a survey just so we can get more information from students on campus. So we have a survey. I'll send it over the email group tonight if I'm allowed to. Perfect. And I would encourage you to fill it out, but then also I would encourage you to share it with your constituents. So your home skillets or whatever, your friends, home skillets is what I say, sorry, outdated term. But share it with your friends, share it with your people in your college, student orgs and everything. I really personally just want to just get as many people to fill out this survey before we make next steps as a committee for what we can do. There's a lot of different options that I may need help from the Student Services Fee group in the crowd to kind of help share, but there's some different options of what we can do. I think I'm going to use my words wisely, but I think an option that has been discussed is, maybe if we were to tack on like $10 extra for a student services fee, would that be enough to help sustain the Adabus for it to continue supporting students on campus? Those sort of things. But that's all in the survey that if you would just fill out really fast and send to your friends to fill out, that'd be great. You should have it by no later than 9:30 tonight. So thank you and go Cats.
Thanks, Marcus.
Can I add to that, Evan?
You may.
We're meeting on Monday, so if you are interested in that discussion, simply on ADA, please come 5:30 CSI.
Thanks, Blake. Are there any further second open period speakers this evening? Chief of Staff Richenberg.
All feeling it, Marta.
Actually on time.
Okay, so Blue Key, as I know I came up here and talked about our applications to be a part of Blue Key. Those have closed, but we do have applications open for our scholarships. So we have several different scholarships where you can earn money, which is always nice. And those applications are due next Wednesday at midnight or 11:59 to be exact. So get those in. You can find those on our webpage. If you have any questions, let me know. I can get you in contact with our scholarship directors. So just let me know. But those are a great opportunity to get some money.
Thanks, Marta. Are there any questions for Chief of Staff Richenberg? Seeing none, thanks so much. Are there any further second open period speakers this evening? Okay, seeing none, Juan will take it away with our Senate shoutouts. Oh, Juan has one thing real quick.
So if you are a sophomore going to be a junior next year, I would highly encourage you to apply to Chimes. That is the Junior Honorary Society. That application closes this Saturday. If you have any questions about that, just ask me. If not, you can literally just look up on Instagram, K-State Chimes, or just look it up on Google. It'll come up. Recommend that.
Thanks, Juan. Are there any further second open period speakers this evening?
Question for the speaker.
Chair Phillips.
What are you all doing next week?
Oh, excellent question, Chair Phillips. Parker, Jeff, Marta, myself, Hattie Polson, our incoming Attorney General, and Logan Cohn, our Legislative Director, will be traveling to the District of Columbia, otherwise known as our nation's capital, to do some advocacy with other Big 12 schools in coordination with, alongside. So we're going to be meeting with members of our Kansas delegation, and we'll also have the opportunity to commingle with some of the other representatives from some of the other schools and meet with representatives that aren't necessarily from the Kansas delegation. So we're really excited. We're flying out 6:01 a.m. Monday morning from Mid-Continent International. If you want to send us off, please don't. That's kind of and we'll be back Thursday morning. End of speech. Are there any further second open period speakers this evening? Okay, seeing none, Juan will take it away with Senate shoutouts.
I'll miss Joseph's DEI presentations. Shout out to Marta Smokercop. Shout out to Kansas Chief Justice Marla Luckert for responding to Resolution 22-2354.
I'm going to add some context to that. Chief Justice of the Kansas Supreme Court, Marla Luckert, was an intended recipient of the commendation to the state of Kansas on or immediately after Kansas's birthday. And she sent us a very lovely letter in response to receiving the commendation. So if you want to see the letter, I'll show it to you. Oh, it's up there.
No.
What? Bryce? It's in my inbox. Bryce is going to pull it up. Juan's going to keep going with shout outs.
Okay. Shout out to Caleb Stout for being an old man and carrying Listerine patches. Yep. And then it's Thank you, Bryce. Okay, well, while you're reading the letter, shout out to the Student Services Fee Committee for all the work they've done this semester. This committee makes my Mondays a little bit better, even when it's stressful. Shout out to Voice of God, Charles. Shout out, Caleb is a very stout president. I might be coughing, but at least I'm happy. Shout out to Girl Scout cookies for being loud but delicious. Shout out to Jeremy for being cold in a sweater. Senate Ops needs grammar. Logan Cohn is cool. Shout out to Hunt's Brothers Pizza. Jack O'Malley is ripped. Shout out to the Matthew McConaughey reference. Shout out to the Strategic Oversight Committee. Thank you for looking for the future of our university. Shout out to today's Senate meeting for being extra spicy. Sorry, folks, having trouble with words here. Shout out to everyone for their debates tonight. Lots of people debated for the first time, so go you. Shout out to Bentley for writing all these funny shout outs. Marcus is a king, we love you. Shout out to Logan for writing all these shout outs. Thank you for all the solid amendment debates tonight. Shout out to Marta for continuing to plug Blue Key Honor Society like it's a YouTube sponsorship.
All right, thanks, everybody. All right, I'm going to go ahead and do reference of legislation. So bills 96 through 103 will be referred to the Student Allocations Committee. And with that, Juan will take it away with our second roll call.
All right, Anderson.
Here.
Bannister.
Here.
Bellamy. Blood. Broughton.
Here.
Brown.
Here.
Coy.
Here.
Cuesta.
Here.
DePaz. Dole.
Here.
Glasscock. Griffith.
Still here.
Heatherman. Hoffman.
Here.
Kemen.
Here.
Kappelman.
Here.
Pershing. Kidd.
Here.
Permer.
Here.
Kenzie.
Here.
Long.
Here.
Morello.
Here.
Murphy. Noretti. O'Malley.
Here.
Oury.
Here.
Pelton.
Here.
Phillips.
Here.
Pilchard.
Here.
Pondolo.
Here.
Rogers.
Here.
Saya Carly.
Here.
Saya Nick.
Here.
Solomon.
Here.
Schweier.
Here.
Spindler.
Here.
Stout.
Here.
Strout.
Here.
Suchanik.
Here.
Talbert.
Here.
Thomas,
Here.
and Wolf.
Here.
Thanks, everyone.
Awesome. Thank you, everybody. With that, I'll go ahead and entertain a motion to adjourn. Senator Kamen.
Next week.
It's been moved and seconded to adjourn until the same time at the same place next week. Are there any objections? Seeing none, we will stand approved at 9:31 PM.